Welcome to Killer Women with your host, best-selling author, Danielle Girard. And now, Danielle's next killer woman.
Hello, and welcome to Killer Women Podcast, a proud member of the Authors on the Air global network with more than 4 million listeners. I am your host, Danielle Girard, and my guest today is Danielle Trussoni, writing as Danielle Postel-Vinay. This is the alter ego of the New York Times bestselling author Danielle Trussoni, whose fiction has won the Los Angeles Times Book Prize and a Bookseller Award in French in 2025, and has been translated into over 30 languages. She is married to a Frenchman and spends part of the year in Paris with her family. Welcome, Danielle.
Thank you, Danielle. How are you? It's nice to see you. Thanks for having me here.
It's good to see you too. Danielle and I also realized that our birthdays are only 4 days apart, and we are both Scorpios.
And we both have the name Danielle. And
Danielle.
Strangely enough, she has a French last name. I have an Italian last name, but she speaks Italian and I speak French. So it's like there's this intermeshing thing happening that I'm not
bizarre. So bizarre.
About. Yes.
And this is why the award, the Booksellers Award in French has this beautiful name. And I said to Danielle, I cannot pronounce that. So what is it? So I don't have to massacre it, which I almost say with your French last name. So, but here we are.
Right.
We made
Here
it.
we are.
We are going to talk about Murder Most Delicious, which is such a fun book, Danielle. I love this. So before we dig into all the fun things and where these ideas came from, would you please tell our listeners about Murder Most Delicious?
Absolutely. So Murder Most Delicious is a kind of classic mystery. It is about food and wine, basically. Like I decided when I was thinking of like, what do I want to write next? I thought French food and France and Paris and murder and all of those things kind of came together into this book. The premise is that an American sommelier, not just any sommelier, she's a master sommelier. There's only about, I think, 250 in real life master sommeliers in the world. And this character is one of them. She loses her sense of taste during COVID, which is devastating because sommeliers, they serve wine and they taste wine and they smell wine all day long. And so to lose your sense of taste is the end of your career, essentially. But she is invited to Paris by an illustrious chef for potentially a new job. And when she goes, she's at this bistro in the 7th arrondissement, and there's 6 glasses of delicious Burgundy wine in front of her. And she goes to taste one, and the chef picks up the glass and drinks it and dies. He's been poisoned. So this thrusts Olivia into a murder mystery. She is the primary suspect because she was there with him. And she ends up meeting a collection of characters who kind of help her solve this mystery and vindicate her.
It's so fun. Plus, like the like brilliant Agatha with her agoraphobia. These characters all have these kind of really fun quirks about them. It feels very like it sort of feels like a modern, food and wine Agatha Christie. It has all the wonderful sort of elements of that, which I and each of the characters is sort of is so well drawn and so both sort of like you can see them maybe as a suspect, but also such a lovely person. So I was curious to know where the idea came from because I think people did legitimately lose their sense of taste in COVID, and you can imagine how traumatizing that would be for somebody. So was that where the idea was born?
Well, so it's true that, I follow a lot of food accounts on Instagram and I read a lot of food writing. And during COVID, that was people were terrified of that because in that industry, your taste is everything. And I personally used to live in France. And one of the reasons I chose to live in France is that I loved wine. I was studying wine. I was actually taking sommelier classes. I wasn't anywhere near Olivia's level. But when I did study with a master sommelier, and then right around COVID, I didn't get COVID, so it wasn't because of this. I think you actually know this, Danielle. I developed an allergy.
Seeing if you would tell the story because it's such a good story.
Yeah, I developed an allergy to alcohol. Like I stopped after lots of tests, we determined that I stopped making the enzyme that breaks it down. So if I drink alcohol, I get really sick. So I had to stop doing this thing that I loved, which was tasting wine, talking about wine, collecting. I had a big collection of wine, like bottles from when my kids were born, stuff like that. And so that was really very hard for me. So I feel like this book came out of that character anyway, came out of a combination of me seeing the anxiety in the food world about losing taste, and then my own sense of longing and sadness that I sort of lost this thing that was so important to me.
And it's like I've seen, we've had this conversation because of, being at these events together and being in San Miguel together. And it isn't just like you drink a bunch of alcohol. It is like alcohol makes you sick. Just
I can't break it down.
Yeah.
I can't break it down. And alcohol is actually a toxin in our body. And if we can't metabolize it and break it down, it can be very detrimental. So yeah, even half a glass, like every once in a while, I'll be invited to some fantastic dinner party, and the person is like got Chateau Neuf du Pape from the 90s or something. And I'm like, okay, I'll just have like half a glass. Like, I'm just going to taste it. And then I get really sick. So it's been hard.
Yeah. It's such a weird, what a weird, what a weird thing. And I know, I can imagine, like you said, literally their taste is everything in this industry. So tell me, obviously I'm a huge fan of your puzzle master books, and we've had you on the show before. This is a very different type of book. It feels like a little bit more whimsical. And what was it like? How's the process different? Is it the same for you? Tell us about that.
Well, so yes, it is a big departure. Partially for that reason, I wrote it under my married name, which is Danielle Postel-Vinay. I wanted to have a kind of fresh start with this book, and I set out to write something a bit lighter, a bit more fun and whimsical, and something that I felt was almost like having a wonderful French lunch, right? Like that could just be like pleasurable from beginning to end, and maybe there's a little bit of intrigue and of course some murder, but on the whole it would be just a pleasurable, fun experience. And what I found, to my shock and delight, I suppose, is that the writing process mirrored that. It felt very fun for me to write it. I wrote it very fast. I didn't do any research really, because most of the stuff in the book, it's stuff that I know from experience. My husband is, as I think you said in your intro, is French. And so we've been going to France together for 15 years. And then before that, I had lived in France for 5 years. So I just have this collection of cultural moments that I wanted to write about, and characters that I wanted to sort of draw and in some cases make fun of. There's a little bit of poking fun at the French in
for
this.
sure. Yeah. In a lovely way. Well, the other thing is it like hits on all the perfect Parisian things, right? In addition to the wine and the food, you've got the bakery, you've got the perfumery, you've got the floral, the flower shop. Like it really hits the fashion. It's like all the things that make everybody want to go to Paris like right now. So I love that about it. It did really feel like a little jaunt in Paris, which I thought was really fun.
That's what I hoped. And I said it in that neighborhood, which is a neighborhood that I visit a lot. It's just this tiny little sliver of streets behind the Eiffel Tower. And I said it there because every summer when I go to Paris, I end up walking there, and I stop at that bakery, and I stop at the American Library, which is actually in the book. I buy flowers at this florist. And so all of these places were places that are important to me personally. And I wanted to bring them to other people.
That's so fun. So now normally I know your process is to write, you write longhanded with like a beautiful old, pen or calligraphy pen. And, are you still doing that the same way, or
I did that the same way. I did it a little bit differently this time, in that I had a really fast turnaround with this. My editor wanted it quickly. And so usually I have a kind of sane pace, but this time, no. And I went to a writer's retreat for a couple of weeks and just like wrote like crazy, and, doing word count, all of that stuff. And so that part of the process was really different for me.
Yeah. That doesn't sound as, how do you do word count when you write by hand? You just guessing?
I count across the line and then down and average. And what ended up happening actually is I would count fewer words than I actually had written. So I was surprised in the end when I entered it into my computer. I was like, oh, I have 10,000 words, more words than I thought I would. So
Wow.
that was actually a good, a good thing.
And did you, when you were working on your books in general, I don't know if I even know this for the Puzzle Master, are you somebody who sort of outlines it first so you know exactly how it's going to unfold?
So I did with this book. I outlined the whole thing. I mean, of course, there were some changes and some surprises that that always happen. The Puzzle Master, I had written, it was a weird process because I had thought it was one thing and then I got halfway through and I realized it was a different thing. So I started over, and when I started over, then I outlined.
Yeah.
And same with the puzzle box, but that's sort of a new thing for me is outlining. Before I was, I had a beginning and an end, and then how I got there was how I got there. But now I think with time and with, I don't know, expertise, I suppose, I find that it's better for me to outline. It actually gives me more freedom.
Interesting. Okay, wait, explain what you mean by that.
Well, because if I'm not sitting at my desk worrying about what's going to happen next,
Uh-huh.
I can spend all of this time on things like character and tone and dialogue and all these other things that, like, I mean, when I don't have an outline, I literally will sit sometimes at my desk for an hour, just be like, what happens in this scene?
Right, right.
I don't understand what this character needs to do. And that for me drives me crazy now. So I would much rather have, like, okay, in this scene or in this, 20 pages, for example, this point happens, this point happens, and this point happens. And then the creativity and the fun is like, how do we get to those points?
Yes. Yeah, it feels
And
much lots so wide open. I mean,
yeah,
I never successfully outlined, so I'm always so curious to know how people do it. But
yeah,
I do, it does, I mean, I get the anxiety of like what's supposed to happen in the scene because that is that's my everyday experience. And it's
yeah. And
really
it was
cool.
mine. I mean, this is my ninth book. Um, and yeah, like for 5 or 6 of them, that was my life.
Yeah.
And what I would end up doing, I found, especially early novels like Angelology, especially, is that when I didn't know, I would just add lots of description.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah, yeah.
And then it gets to be very long and you're still not discovering the thing that's important about that scene.
Yeah.
So working, it takes time. I think maybe we talked about this before. Jeffrey Deaver says he has like, 80 pages of outlining for every book at least. And like every single thing is outlined. And I'm not like that. Like, I think my outline for this book was 20 pages,
Yeah.
maybe 25 pages. It was, and it was like, this happens in the scene. This is the location. These are the characters involved. This is the twist or the little thing that happens that moves you on to the
Yeah.
next chapter. But that's it.
Yeah, but you still have to, like, it's interesting to me because I feel like the process of creating that is still a creative process that you have to sort of,
Sure.
so you still, I imagine, are sitting at your or computer or wherever you're outlining your notebook and
Yeah.
being like, what is the twist here? How does that work?
Yeah.
But somehow does it feel easier because you're condensing everything into sort of the like, what's the next thing and the next thing? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if it's easier, but
Well,
what it
yeah,
is
exactly.
that you're in that kind of state of mind where
Yeah.
you're looking at it from a bird's eye view and like, if this happens here, what happens in the end? If this happens here, what does that mean for that character in the next chat? So you're able to look at it in a different way. When I'm in the chapter writing it, I'm thinking about so many things at the same time. I'm
Right.
trying to do everything at once.
Right.
And so I don't know. I mean, I'm someone who's always amazed that when I finish a book, I'm amazed that I was able to write it. And when I start a new one, I'm amazed that like, I don't know if I'm going to actually be able to write another one.
I think
So
that's normal. I feel like the
I'm just
people,
like,
so many people I've talked to, brilliant people who've written hundreds of books, are like, I always think like, oh, maybe that was my last book, you know?
yeah, it sort of feels like that. You're like, this, it's magical when it happens. And then you're like, oh my God, what if that doesn't happen again?
Right. Yeah. But you're also a teacher. Like, I know you're very involved in the San Miguel, you know, annual writers conference, and you just did a writers conference, you said, with Ivy Pachoda. So do you feel like by teaching, you sort of solidify some of your own processes? I mean, I feel like that's sometimes something that happens.
Yeah, I do a lot less teaching than I used to. I used to teach in an MFA program back before COVID when I lived in New York. But I still do teach maybe twice a year. And yeah, you know what it does more than anything is that I find myself going back to basics with people and talking about simple things that every writer needs to do, and me too, like that I need to do for example, one of the classes that I teach is about openings, right? Like, what are the things that we need in an opening? What makes a great opening? What's the thing in an opening that makes the reader go on to the next page? What's the hook? Like all of those things that I wish that I did an MFA. I wish someone had told me. Basically, every book I would be trying to figure this stuff out, and it was an accident if it happened or not.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, I think it does, teaching does help in that respect, that you're forced to go back and really think about what you're doing in a way that you wouldn't if you were just bumbling through.
Right. And so, I mean, I like, in terms of these characters, did you sort of have them all figured out, or does some of that develop as you write?
Some of it develops, but I had, there are characters like this in this neighborhood.
Yeah.
And, obviously they're not exactly the same, but I had types, I had a couple of characters that I wanted to create. And I've been carrying them around with me for a few years. I think that's also why it came relatively quickly for me, this one, because I have been thinking about it for a long time.
Yeah, well, it is super fun. And you got to go. I mean, I assume we all should be able to write off any trips we take to foreign places because they might end up in a book sometime. I feel like that should
Well,
be
and it's also legitimate because it is research. Especially my
absolutely.
French trips. My French trips where we would do things like I would go and take a bunch of photographs of food, right? So
Yeah.
I'd go and have a French lunch and then just take a bunch of photographs and use those
To
in the book.
describe.
To
Yeah,
describe.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's so fun. Well, I do love the cast of characters. It seems like they all feel like they could be, like I said, right in a neighborhood, right out of an Agatha Christie story. And when you're developing characters, do you do character sketches? Are you somebody how do you sort of like pinpoint, like how did Agatha get agoraphobe? Like how did you sort of, or like, oh, this woman is stuck inside her home?
Yeah. So you're talking about Augusta, I
Oh,
think.
sorry, Augusta,
Yeah,
yes, in my
that's
mind.
okay.
I'm like Agatha Christie, Augusta, yes.
I know it's really close. So Augusta Dupin, that's the main detective of the story. And she has a kind of interesting lineage. Her great grandfather is Auguste Dupin, who was Edgar Allan Poe's detective in Murder on the Rue Morgue.
I love that. Okay, yes.
So, and actually, to give you just like a personal, window into this process, one of the very first mysteries I ever read when I was 15 in high school was Murder on the Rue Morgue by Edgar Allan Poe, and I just absolutely fell in love with Paris murder, the darkness, with the way that that Edgar Allan Poe writes. And I don't know, like somehow I think that just stayed, that one detective stayed with me. And I thought, what would happen if his great great granddaughter was a detective? And so she is Edgar Allan Poe's detective's great great granddaughter, but she has agoraphobia. And she's kind of stuck in her house. I mean, she has a history. She used to be part of the police force and she used to be very good. Like she's an extremely talented detective, but she no longer can leave. So what that means in terms of structure of the story and in terms of the way that things unfold is that the neighborhood has to come to her.
Which I love. Like that's such a great construct, right? Like it's obviously her going around would be, if she could, it would be more efficient, but much less interesting. Which is why I love how these things happen, right? Or how you create them.
And I loved the idea of it makes that neighborhood group necessary, right? Because she can't get information without the neighborhood people who are out collecting it for her. And she's the kind of mastermind behind all of it, where she's sending them out. And it also, I think, sort of, for me, it created the ambience that I wanted of community. Yeah. I think in this kind of mystery, which is, it's called a cozy mystery.
Right, right.
And one of the reasons that I think that people enjoy them and that I wanted to write one of them is that it's about friendship and it's about people coming together for things, dinners, coffees, wine, whatever, and talking things through and having this kind of longevity with each other where they know each other's stories, they're always there. And so in the context of a murder mystery, having those characters come together created this kind of essential community. Nothing, you get the feeling that like nothing would be right in the world if this neighborhood watch was not like on guard watching over things.
And it does feel like the kind of group of people, maybe not exactly this way, but that would exist in, those areas of Paris as well, right? That they all know exactly who was coming and going, and who left the restaurant when they left and visited the perfumery, and
totally.
Yeah, it was
totally. And there's a kind of generational thing in Paris, so this is something that I found fascinating as an American who, in America, we move all over the place. And, there's very rare for generations to be in the same place. But in Paris, for example, my husband's family, they've been in that neighborhood, in this, not exactly the neighborhood I write about, but very close by, since the 19th century, before the Eiffel Tower was built. Like they had land there, when it was pasture, when it was like cows.
Yeah.
So it's like, for me, that is fascinating that these people would have these stories and have these traditions that they keep for generations, and that there's something sacred about that.
Yeah, right. It is. I think I have envy of those kinds of, knowing the people that have surrounded your family for generations. I think that's incredible. Yeah. We definitely don't do that here. We are so nomadic and, and
right.
connected in those ways. So
and I am especially. I've lived all over the place.
Yeah, I know. And me too.
Very rarely put down.
Yeah, I've been in Montana a long time, but I also feel like a little disconnected from like the idea of, even like where my, all my siblings are sort of spread to the wind, but but I do, I love that those people actually do feel like family to one another, which I think is, also, so it is such a, it's so fun to read about. Now I know you've always got something up your sleeve. Are you plotting, dreaming in the world? And tell us, give us a hint.
Sure. So right now I'm working on something. I haven't completely solidified what I'm doing. I'm in this phase, you probably recognize this phase where you just have a kind of concept and a bunch of ideas, and I'm seeing how they fit together. I do know that it's another mystery. Yeah. And, it's set in the place where I grew up in Wisconsin, which is very different for me. Usually I'm writing about foreign countries and so, I don't know exactly what it's going to be about yet, but I do have those elements.
I love that. And actually, I think it's really like, it's good to know that sort of you're letting these things kind of flow. Because I think aspiring authors want to hear sort of how, and do you feel like when you're in that place, is it like a let it sit and it'll, come, or is it a like write a lot of sort of just like idea generation, or how do you sort of navigate when things haven't quite gelled?
Yeah, so I give myself time where I'm not actually working on it, like at my desk, where I'm reading books around it. Yeah. Like maybe this novel is sort of like what I have in mind, or maybe, this book of nonfiction about this certain topic is tangential to what I think I want to do.
Yeah.
Then I set a date, like for me on June 1st, after this book is published, and I'm still going to be doing stuff for it, but not as much. I don't know, maybe I will be, but on the calendar, June 1st, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to start working on specifics, right? Like I'm going to start making character lists. I'm going to start making like a plot, basically like an elevator pitch. What I do often first is like get the concept down, right? Like that will radiate throughout the book. Right. So like that little the one sentence I told you about Olivia, like a sommelier who's lost her sense of taste goes to Paris where she gets embroiled in a murder. Right. Like that is just like one sentence.
Right.
And I'm going to be working on that for the new book. And then from there, I start developing major twists or major things that happen in the book. I have a whiteboard and I'll just write it sort of randomly on the whiteboard and let it sit there for a while. And from that place, I'll start getting more granular and maybe I'll be able to make an outline.
Yeah, like, and then at some point an outline will happen. It is,
Maybe.
there's a little, it's not very concrete, right? There's a little sort of magic. I think you mentioned that, you used that word, I think even before we started recording maybe, but, that it just, some of it does take a little bit of like, you have just some faith in that the universe is going to kind of help you find the edge.
Totally. Totally. I mean, I really am not sure I can do it again. Like every time I go through this process, I'm like, it might not work. And the truth of the matter is sometimes it doesn't work,
Yeah.
right? I've had projects that I've started like this and I just keep banging my head against the wall. And I'm like, why is this not working? And why is this not working? And well, guess what? It's not going to work.
Yeah. And you
And
then you got to
yeah,
know when to, right, pull the ripcord. Yeah, exactly.
right. You have to know, you have to realize like, ooh, that's not. And so, I guess, part of the exploratory process is to see if it's going to go forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's better to I've written whole books and then had to pull the ripcord. So that's not the way that's definitely not the,
Yeah.
well, this is
Yeah,
okay.
me too.
Now tell our listeners, is the best way to find you still, like through the Danielle Trussoni, your website? What's the best way to find
Yeah, so there's a little tab on my website about Danielle Postel-Vinay and about this book. That's the best place to find me. Also, I'm on Instagram. I have a newsletter that I don't send out that often. So like if people are sick of getting 100 emails a day, I send it out like every couple months. So people can sign up for that. But I think the best way is Instagram. I'm always on there.
Yeah, that's the easiest for most of us. And we will be giving away a copy of Murder Most Delicious on our Instagram page, which is Killer Women Podcast, or over on Facebook if you're there, at Danielle's Killer Women. And it was really fun. This was like really delightful. I don't read a lot of cozies. I know
Uh-huh.
this is like not something that's really like in the mainstream of a lot of what I see. So it was actually lovely and super fun to be in this little neighborhood, and really delightful characters. And I missed the connection to Poe, but I love that. I'm sure it was in there, but I probably was like a little, moving
Yeah,
too.
I'm not beating you over the head with it. It's kind of
No,
like just a subtle little thing.
yeah, I appreciate this. I appreciate subtlety, especially when I'm paying better attention. But anyway, that's so fun. Thank you for joining us so much today, Danielle.
Thank you, Danielle. This was really, really fun.
Everyone, thanks for coming today on Killer Women with Danielle Trussoni, writing as Danielle Postel-Vinay, and we will see you next time. Bye.